depression, or whether it just sort of makes you feel better in the short term.
Yeah.
It's hard to know how much emphasis to put on these studies because there's been such a long history of like gotcha studies against cannabis by the psychiatric community. So I sort of think we need to like start from scratch and really evaluate the role of cannabis in depression, with a blank slate and with an open mind, not with these like NIDA funded anti-cannabis looking studies.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I'm also a big believer in listening to patients. And cannabis is complicated for a lot of reasons. The benefits of cannabis wouldn't necessarily come out in like your traditional studies. I could go on and on, but in a nutshell, cannabis works on about 5 different things at once. They study these things. Does it help with depression? Whereas cannabis is helping with your pain, your sleep, your anxiety, your mood. So it wouldn't necessarily come out in the studies that they do. But tons of patients use it for depression, and it's really helping them. You wonder, are they sort of using it to escape reality? But then you're wondering, like, is that necessarily a bad thing?
Yeah, reality sort of sucks right now. I think it's not so bad.
I used to read the newspaper to relax.
Yeah.
And like last night after a really hard day of work, I started reading like the Washington Post, and like I almost had an anxiety attack reading the paper. Climate change, the world's on fire, our democracy's in shambles. It's so anxiety provoking. I was just thinking last night about this exact issue. It's like cannabis helps people forget. I don't know if you've ever read The Botany of Desire by Michael Pollan, but he picks 4 plant species and talks about how we co-evolve with them. And his chapter on cannabis is like one of the most interesting things I've ever read. It's like 1/4 of the book, The Botany of Desire. I would like highly recommend at least that quarter of the book. And, cannabis helps us forget, and otherwise our brains would be overloaded and shut down. Forgetting is an important part of what our brain does, or would be overloaded with information. And, how could you possibly function if we're so bombarded with things?
Right.
And, I was just wondering, like, at this point in time, you don't want to tune out. We all have to be politically active. We've got to change things. Right now, there's never been a time that I can remember where it's more important for people to like try to stand up to what's happening and fix things. Or I don't think we're going to be around that much longer, or at least we're not going to have democracy for that much longer. But if it could help take the edge off and help you forget about the horrible things for at least part of your day, so you can focus on your family, focus on your friends, focus on your hobbies, I can see why it really is appealing to people who are feeling down.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that there's so many beneficial things that can come from cannabis right now, especially that disconnecting from the news is like, it's like self-care, you kind of need to disconnect from the world sometimes, especially when it is this stress-inducing to learn about every single thing going on every single day. So, that I also work in the media, I write the news. And so a lot of the time after I finished a news shift, it's been 6 to 8 hours of bombardment by this kind of negative, worrying information. And after a shift, one of my favorite things to do is to sit out in the back garden with my bong, and I smoke and I just watch the trees. And it's exactly that. It like disconnects me from that stress-inducing news cycle and just sort of lets me reconnect with nature a little bit, feel into my body and figure out, actually, I was really stressed this shift. I feel like we're going to look back on this time also and think, wow, we really made it through that. That was insanely stressful. I'm surprised I didn't smoke more.
Well, I think people either use cannabis or alcohol to cope with, unfortunately, some people, do a great job with like exercise and meditation, but most people either use cannabis or alcohol to give themselves a little extra help. And I feel like alcohol just like numbs everything, makes it disappear and smooths it over, whereas cannabis actually helps you think about it and process it. So personally, I think cannabis is a much more productive and healthier, not to mention physically it's healthier than alcohol, and it doesn't kill 89,000 people a year. But I do think the more the cannabis is legalized, the more bad news it is for the alcohol industry for all the reasons we've been talking about, which is why they love to contribute to these scary advertisements. Whenever there's a legalization initiative for cannabis, you have the alcohol industry contributing to the anti-legalization side. Yeah. But I agree with you. I think a lot of people are using it to kind of cope with and sort of proactively not develop PTSD just from being alive during these times.
Right. That's a very good way to put it. So the last thing I wanted to ask you about is we've been really careful out here. Everybody's been wearing masks for months and nobody's really been going anywhere. And the state really shut down early. But I heard from a lot of people early on that they weren't able to access medical marijuana doctors, like they couldn't go see them. So telemedicine has been a huge thing during this time. Is that also a way that people can just get sort of consultations to get advice on like how to use cannabis properly?
Absolutely. I do that as well. That's one of my absolute favorite subjects. To talk about. I was just doing certifications for my Chelsea patients, but I just had a lot of people that wanted to do certifications. So I decided to do it privately through my website. I didn't want to just restrict it to my primary care practice because I felt bad, saying no to like everybody else.
Yeah.
So I decided to open it up a little bit. And if patients want to reach me, they could just find me at petergrinspoon.com and then they could ask questions or sign up. It's pretty easy to find me.
Awesome. And now for your latest cannabis news. As of this episode's publishing, the US House of Representatives is still scheduled to vote for the first time to legalize cannabis in the US on Monday, September 21st. Unfortunately, there are some rumors that the scheduled floor vote for the MORE Act could be delayed, so we'll have to see if it actually happens. And if it does get a vote, it's expected to pass to the Senate, but that's where it's going to likely hit the top of a mile-high pile of bills on Senator Mitch McConnell's desk. If the MORE Act doesn't get passed into law before New Year, Senator Kamala Harris said this week at a town hall that the Biden-Harris administration is running on a platform of decriminalizing the use of marijuana and automatically expunging all marijuana use convictions and incarceration for drug use alone, which would be a start, I guess. Vermont's House of Representatives voted last week to advance a bill that would automatically expunge records for some people with low-level marijuana convictions, and it would also allow for residents to grow and possess more marijuana without the threat of jail time. If the proposed legislation passes into law, Vermont residents will be allowed to have 2 ounces of weed on them, and they can legally grow 3 plants at home. The first recreational cannabis manufacturing facility has been licensed in the state of Maine. Sea Smoke Extracts in Auburn, which does extractions for the medical market, will soon be also supplying products to 2 adult-use stores. Seaweed Co. in South Portland and Jammy Enterprises in Newry got the go-ahead last week to start sales when Maine's recreational market finally opens up on October 9th. If you're in Massachusetts and you have a cannabis offense on your record, check out Western Massachusetts Virtual Expungement Clinic at the end of September. You can search for it on Facebook. And if you're attending MassCann's first virtual Boston Freedom Rally, I'll be part of the panel on cannabis in the media on Saturday, September 19th at 2:25 p.m. So make sure you tune into MassCann and send us your questions. If you love what we do here at Different Leaf, we'd love it if you hit subscribe wherever you're listening to us and follow us on social media. You can find us at Different Leaf, and I'm at Brit the British. Also head over to differentleaf.com and go check out the latest issue of our beautiful magazine. A huge thanks to our guest, Dr. Peter Grinspoon, thanks to our wonderful producer, Andrea Maraskin, and thanks to Homebody for the music.